Hello and welcome. So in our previous tutorial, we were able to create our database schema for storing our health facilities. So in this tutorial, we are going to look at how we can add the import script to automatically import our data into the database. So remember when we ran our OGR inspect command in our previous tutorial, it generated for us the layer mapping utility, and it also generated the model structure. So in this case, we are going to just create our health facilities. But before we do that, I remember we did not save our commits. So let me just run a git status. So in this case, we are going to add a git add can say health facilities settings.py, and then we can also add a commit message. Let's say maybe created the database settings. Maybe you can even say added or initialized. We can also now add the facilities models py. Sorry, it should be git add. Then we can also add the migrations. Then you can also add a commit message. Say health facilities models. Yeah, so having done that, now we can proceed. Since we are not using the SQLite database, this one here, so we need to remove it. So I'm just going to remove it, and then yeah, so now we can create our script for loading the data. I'll just put it inside this data folder. I'll just create it here. I can call it maybe load or import. Let me just use load. I can call it facilities.py. Yeah, so inside here I'm first of all going to import the OS module from Python, and then I'm also going to import Django from Django .contrib.gis. We have some utility functions. So .utils import layer mapping, and then I also need to import data source from something called GDAL. So GDAL stands for the Geospatial Data Abstraction Library, which you can use to be able to check. So I will also import the models sorry, from facilities. So I can just say from facilities.models import health facilities. Yeah, so I forgot to save my layer mapping. Let me see if I can get it from command history. Seems not, so I'm just going to repeat. Since I have the command history, I can just rerun this. Basically what it does is just it prints out the layer mapping for us. So I'll also add this. I'll copy this and paste it here. So this is the dictionary that has a key as an key that represents the field of the table and the value. Okay, and for this, I think these points are many. So we have, I think I'm going to change these as to multi-point. We need to have multi-point because it's not a single point, but it has multiple points. So I'll just create a function here. Maybe I can just call it run. or I can even call it import data. You can name it as you please. I want to have to see the output, detailed output, so I'm just going to add the variables to be true, and then I'm going to make a reference to the file. So the data file is it will be os get current working directory, and then we are going to add the path. So the path will be, in this case, will be data. So the current working directory is, it's this. So we have data, and then we have our health facilities as health facilities .gpkg, and then maybe we can call our data source something like ds, or let's just name it in a way that somebody can understand. Data source is equals to data source. Remember, we have imported our data source at the top here. So let me just scroll up. So we have this data source is equals to data source. Which data source? It requires a file, and then we can say maybe facilities variable name is equals to data source. Sorry, is equals to data source, and so this one is a layer. So what do we call our layer? So it will going to take the layer name, and that's why we are kind of getting the first index of this data source, because when you run this data source, it's going to give you a list of things including the layer name. So the layer name is the first item. That's why we are getting that layer name from this. So we are going to add our layer mapping. So I can just call this facility layer mapping. So layer mapping, which is a function, and we are going to add our locations, or rather our model. So our model is health facilities, and then we are going to add the file, which is the data source or the data, and then we are going to add facilities layer mapping, and then finally we can just tell it that the layer name is equals to facilities. I actually think it's better to name this facilities layer so that it's specific to what we are trying to load here, or what you're trying to call here. Yeah, so we have the model, we have the file, we have the mapping, and then we have the layer, which is equals to the facility layer, because we want to have that layer name. Yeah, so our final step will be saving our data. So we will just call this layer mapping. Maybe we can use a try catch exception, but I'm not going to get into it right now. So our verbose will be equals to verbose, and yeah, so let's see what happens when we run this. So we are going to get into the Django shell. Oh yeah, so Python manage.py shell. So this shell command gets us into a Django shell, or a Python shell that is within the Django environment. So I'm just going to import from data, import load facilities. I've named it wrongly, so it should be facilities, not facilitates, facilities. So I can just click load facilities dot. In this case, I've called my function import data. Yeah, so I can just, Yeah, so it's complaining that variable facilities layer mapping has been referenced before the assignment. Oh yeah. I think there are some mistake here. So we need to have this health facilities mapping as after the file here, not facilities layer mapping. So that's what we need to have here. So I'm just going to exit the shell and then get into the shell again. Import. Yeah, so it's saying that invalid mapping geometry, model has point field, layer geometry type is point. Okay, let me just return this to point, and I need to exit so that it can pick up that file, and then just repeat this command. Okay, so we have, okay, it's saying that it failed to save. Error. Yeah, we're having multiple errors, and I think I've forgotten to add something here. Let's see what happens when I add strict true. So we have added strict so that whenever we have execution of the model mapping, it will, if it encounters an error, it just stops. Yeah, because it kind of saves us time. So let's see what we have. Let's repeat the command again. Yeah, so there's a null violation constraint. My guess is that it has already imported this data, but one way to know that we are going to see shortly. So since we have our model, let's register our model in the admin of the application. So we are going to go into the facilities app, open admin, and then we are going to import, let me just use this and paste it here. But in this case, I'm just going to use from.models. So I'm just going to write a simple command, admin dot site dot register health facilities. Okay, having done that, let's create a super user. So we'll use Python manage.py. Forgotten the super user. So we create super user. It should be create super user. Yeah, so I'll just call it jcaris codes. Jcaris codes at email.com. You can just set some password there. So this user is the one who is going to log into the Django administration. I have an issue with the passwords. Okay, so let me run my server. Yeah, so let me just open my browser in that server. Import 8000. Yeah, so this is what we have. So I'm just going to get into the admin. And I added jcaris codes. Just set up my login by using my password. Yeah, so we have health facilities. Let's see what we have. Yeah, so the health facilities have not loaded. How do I know? This is because I cannot see any data here. I'm supposed to see some data. So I'm going to look at what is preventing or what is making the layers not to be able to load, or not, the data is not being populated into the database. But nevertheless, let's say if you want to add a new health facility here, this is what you have. And yeah, this should be, it is a map area, but I think it also has a kind of an issue. But we are going to see as to the reasons why. Actually, I know why we do not have a map here. Let me just do a quick change here in the, yeah, we've already set up leaflet. We need to add some settings in our configuration. Yeah, so this is what we'll add in our leaflet settings. Let me just add it at the end here. Yeah, so I've copied this from my previous application. So in this case, we can just say health facilities map. Let me just save that. Let's see what happens when we go back to our server and do a refresh. Yeah, so basically, if you want to add a new health facility, this is what you're gonna add, or you're gonna be populating here. So let's see, we're going to see why we are having an issue with the importing our layers shortly. Okay, so we can, let's go back to our models. And you remember the geom field has been saved as a point field. But as I had mentioned, it is a multi-point field because there are multiple points in this layer. It's not a single point, or it's not a one point. So in this case, it should be a multi-point field. Yeah, so let's save that. And now because we have saved these, we will need to update our migrations. And another additional thing that I think I'm going to do, but let's first of all save this. So I'm going to run Python manage.py make migrations app is facilities. Yeah, so we have added, or we have altered or changed the fields. That's why we have this. So in our migrations, you'll notice that we have another extra migration or additional migration. So another thing that I'm going also to add here is I'm going to also create an index because times when you deal with the data, these data sets for geospatial or GIS data, you may find some lag of sorts. So we just added this meta class that takes indexes. So you can familiarize yourself with database indices and why you need to use them. But nevertheless, this helps us in fetching the data faster. Yeah, data using this location or the geom field. Yeah, so we can just yeah, we have set it up. So we need to migrate. So we are just going to run make my Python manage.py migrate. Yeah, and then we have added that. And then finally, I think we can add something else here so that when you view the models, they'll have a user-friendly kind of line instead of having object 1, object 2, which is not very good to or very friendly to the user. So I'll just add self.name and we'll see what happens to that. So now since we have changed our our model geometry to our multi-point field or to multi-point field, so we need also to update that in our load facilities.py file. And, it won't be point, but it will be multi-point. Okay, so the rest remains the same. So let's see what will happen when we get into the shell and then we import our data. Yeah, so it seems that there is some data that probably has been imported. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to clear the database using a command called flush. It's a destructive command, so if you're not sure how to use it, do not run it. So just basically clearing the database tables. And you can see it is also warning you that it is irreversibly going to destroy the current data that is there. So let me just run migrate. Oh yeah. We had changed, we had added the index, so it had not picked it up. That's why I've run these make migrations. And Django is awesome because it gives you these kind of a warning or an error that tells you that you need to migrate. Okay, so we have done the migrations. So let's get into our shell and see if we can be able to populate our data. So it seems like we have an issue with one of the columns, null value in column healthcare, and I think I know why we have this in the column healthcare. So since we have not told it to accept null values, that's why we are having these problems. So let me just exit, and I'm going to once again make a few changes to these models. What you cannot leave as null is the geometry. Yeah, so in this case, I think we're going to also need to rerun make migrations. And then it will pick up the changes. And then we can migrate. And then we can try and rerun our import script. Yeah, so now you see it is saving, this indicates that it is saving our layers, and that's why I use these verbose. In the mapping utility, I use the verbose is equals to true, because it gives us all the details. Yeah, so saying that there is an issue somewhere. String is returned to non-string or non-type. Yeah, I think this has to do with these because we have said that it needs to return self.name, and in some cases we have null fields, so it's returning none. So we can maybe fix that using some type of error or something, but for now we are just going to leave it as it is. So let me just exit. I'll also be required to create another super admin, so create super user, and then I'm going to leave it as that. Then I can call it jcariscodes@email.com. Then I'm gonna set my password. Set the password again, and then I'm going to run my server using the run server command. Yeah, so now let's go back to admin and try and do a refresh. And we can just log in using the username or the super user that I created and the password. So if we click on health facilities, so it is blank. Let me see. I think there's something that I'm missing. So if we go to the admin.py, so let me just create a class. So I'll call this health facilities admin, and then I can import. So in this case, I'm going to add something else. I'm going to add to support viewing these data inside the admin. I'm going to import this leaflet.admin. Import leaflet geoadmin. So I'm going to add the leaflet geoadmin here, and maybe I can add a list display, and maybe I can add the I don't know, maybe I can add from the models I can copy the healthcare. And then I can, yeah, so after that I can just add these admin.site.register. So I'm registering this model to the admin health facilities, and then I can also add the health facilities admin. So let me save that, see what we get. Yeah, so the issue, let me just close that, seems to have originated from here. You see I'm registering the same model to its own model instead of the admin part of it. So that's why we are getting this error. So let me just change that and save. And then going back to my browser, we're gonna see some information here. Or we should see some information. If I try to add, you see, this is a map that if you want to add a new point, this is what you get. I don't know why we are not. Let me just change this here to list display. Which is equals to, I can set a tuple, and then I can just, let me just add one field for now. Let me just call this field for amenity. Then I think I can add a comma there because it's a tuple. Then I can just, yeah, so it seems like we have an issue. Our health facilities are not being displayed. So let me cancel, let me just stop my server and start it again. Then let me do a refresh. Yeah, so it seems that our facilities are not being displayed. So I'm going to see or look into why we are having this issue. So after restarting our server, we were able to, I just did a restart on the server. We were able to, and of course, I also changed these to display the name and healthcare. So whenever you go to the admin and do a refresh here, you're going to see the locations. So if I open, let's say I see Kijabe, this is what we have. Okay. If we open something else like Jerusalem in Dandora, this is what you have, the backend. And then if you add something else like this shop, this is what you have. And if you decide to add a new location or a new health facility, the map automatically zooms to Nairobi area in Kenya, although you can set it to zoom into the entire Kenya map. So the zooming in of this map or the setting of that map is being, it's what we have configured in the settings.py file below here. So this is what we have there under leaflet config. So we have set the zoom to be 1.30. We can actually change this zoom. Why don't we just do it? So if I do that and then I refresh my map, you'll notice that the zoom level is changing. So you see now we are seeing Nairobi as a very small locality or a very small area. So if I repeat this again, let me change this to something like 5. Let's see what we have in our map. Yeah, so you see we can see the entire Kenya country. You can also add some point here if you want. You can also, I think you can also draw a circle. Okay, I think the circle will probably not save, but for the points I know that they can save because this is point data. So just add some point. Let's say other. Just say hospital. Skip the operation. Maybe save. Oh yeah, it's saying this field is required. So let me just add other as well. Yeah, so you see it has saved this health facility, although I don't know where it has placed it. Oh yeah, it has actually placed it somewhere in the northern part of Kenya. Yeah, so this summarizes our creation of, we've been able to import our data, create the model, and also import our data. And since now we have our data inside our database, we will see the next steps on what to do with it. Okay, so if you like this tutorial, you can share it with colleagues. So you can also drop a like so that it can improve my YouTube algorithm. And then you can also look into the repository for this data set that I'm going to share in the description below. So see you in the next one, and thank you for watching.